Alzheimer's, how to plan for this, and the legal steps that we all need to be aware of. Every adult who has any assets needs 3 core documents: revocable living trust, durable power of attorney, advanced healthcare directive. Revocable living trust, a much better version of a will, allows someone to step in and manage your major assets, your successor trustees. If you're incapacitated, make sure your assets go where you want them to go when you kick the bucket without being exposed to courts. Durable power of attorney for finance. That's a critical document, especially when you're facing dementia, because that's a document where you authorize the individual or individuals who you trust to step in and deal with your day-to-day legal and financial issues on your behalf, to step into your shoes. Advanced directive, healthcare decision-making, crucial. And we always want to make the point, you might have, raise your hand virtually if you have these documents in place. Has it been more than 3 years since you updated, or has there been a change in your life since you created those documents? And you have to make sure they're up to date, that you have the right people named, that your assets are directed where you want them to go. Because if you have severe dementia or memory issues, you may lose the ability to update those documents down the road, and you may lose the ability to change who's named in them and where your assets are going. The first step when families come in to see us and they have a parent or grandparent, or maybe it's a person themselves who's facing a dementia diagnosis and they need to take steps, first thing we want to look at is their durable power of attorney document, because that's the document that authorizes someone else to make key legal decisions and key updates to their estate plan, certain types of updates and asset transfers and long-term care planning on their behalf if they can't do it. And we don't want to see just a check the box form. If it's a check the box form, that's fine for basic steps, but it probably doesn't cover some of the critical asset protection tools that we need to have in these documents. So all of this to say, you want to have these documents in place, but you need to make sure they're up to date. And we can often update them a little bit later than you might think. Just because you have a diagnosis does not mean you cannot update your documents. Because if you don't, your family might be stuck in court and trying to deal with things, and they might be very limited in what they can do.
When we face some of these issues, of course, you have to have these key documents in place. They have to say the right things. To a large extent, that's to empower you, the family member, you, the designated trustee, you, the trusted individual, to implement a plan that makes sense. And that's not a simple statement. Everybody's different. Everybody's profile is different. Somebody has more income, somebody has more assets, money in retirement accounts, whatever it may be. So I first want to stress the fact that to do a good job, you really want to integrate your financial planning with your legal planning. Once you think about this, it's obvious, but most of us don't think about it. We don't want to do some investment over here that makes long-term sense, perhaps, for somebody who's healthy, while on the legal planning side, we're planning because there's a diagnosis of dementia. We have to integrate the two and coordinate the two. Many reasons. One of them is eligibility for government benefits. There are a number of programs, Medi-Cal, California's version of the federal Medicaid program being the most significant. As many know, it is a program that can pay the cost of nursing home care. Not assisted living, not board-in care, but nursing home care. And that can save assets for a family. It can be the key to avoiding depression, all of the downsides of having assets exhausted. So we're always looking at what's a plan that makes sense. How are you going to get quality care? How are you going to pay for that care? How do you protect assets if it makes sense? But again, always the focus is on maximizing quality of life. And that's a complicated question. Most folks would rather preserve some assets for the next generation than have everything exhausted. Not everybody, but it's a matter of identifying options, knowing the alternatives, knowing what steps can be taken. That's implementing a plan. There are myriad tax issues that come up. We've been very disappointed to see a lot of folks doing it at home. They learn some of the basics about Medi-Cal and they take steps. Ooh, they forgot about property tax increases. They forgot about capital gains because they're going to sell an asset. So again, when we do this kind of planning, it isn't just Medi-Cal. It isn't just a power of attorney. It's how do these things all fit together? What's the goal? How do we avoid making any tax mistakes, capturing benefits in the world of government benefits, maximizing all the good, accommodating all the bad, and just putting together a plan that makes a great deal of sense. It takes experience to understand how all these things come together. Now, I honestly believe it took me 15, 20 years to really develop an understanding of how these things fit together. Because again, you can understand, get Medi-Cal, but what does it mean to have Medi-Cal? Where does it limit you? How does it empower you? Knowing where it's good and where it's not so good, that's part of the planning process. So it's complicated. We have to look at investments. We have to coordinate. We have to take sometimes radical steps, sometimes simple steps. Last point is that the Medi-Cal rules are constantly evolving and changing. The most material significant change is really kind of amazing in our view. It has been the case until recently that if an individual is in a nursing home, for example, she couldn't have more than $2,000 in countable assets while qualifying for Medi-Cal. Now, many assets don't count. In California, a home of any value doesn't count. Money in retirement accounts, that doesn't count. By the way, that could be $3, $5, $6 million worth of assets. They don't count. Okay. So it's been $2,000 in countable assets. That's been the plateau. That changed recently. Now it's $130,000. $130,000. If you're married, the spouse at home can have about $145,000 while still achieving eligibility for Medi-Cal. That's going to change in the future. We know what the changes are, but we're waiting to see what the details are going to be. So again, the point is, it's not static. You have to keep an eye on these things. We are training other attorneys. Mark and I co-authored a book on long-term care called Facing the Reality of Long-Term Care. We've made many copies available to the association, and it's available on Amazon through our office. It's free to our clients. It is a little bit out of date on that one point that I mentioned, that $2,000 factor. But when it comes to planning and all the issues you need to think about, it's up to date. So we continue to watch everything, to be available, to know how to put all of these pieces together, which I think is the most important point.
But I know Mike talked about how we need to deal with tax issues and government benefits eligibility issues, property tax, capital gains tax, income tax, estate tax. Yeah, it is complicated, but we don't want to just overwhelm you. We can absolutely help. You have resources available. So I just want to define some action steps. Talk to us. I know that this is what we do. You need to work with experts to sort through this. And there's no one size fits all situation, but we can walk you through it step by step. And we can make sure your plan is updated properly. Because if it isn't updated, hasn't been updated for a while, this might be our last chance. You might lose the opportunity to update it forever if you don't come in and get that done, get that help, and talk to the Alzheimer's Association. Claire and her team are amazing. That 24/7 helpline available at alz.org. Another wonderful, wonderful resource. Overcome the 3Ds, I like to call it: the danger of delay and denial. You think I'll get to it forever. I'll get to it later. I'm never going to have dementia, or my parents aren't, or my grandparents aren't. Or I already did documents. I'm done. I don't need to talk to lawyers. Avoiding these steps now will lead to massive problems later. We are on the other side of that, helping families that didn't plan ahead, but we're also helping a lot of families who have. And I just want you to take a moment to imagine the future, and imagine a future where you've taken these steps. And we don't want anybody to face the issues of dementia. We hope you never have to face them. Many of you probably already are. But just think of all we can do ahead of time to hopefully slow down the progression of dementia by taking the right steps for diet, and by taking the right steps to live a healthy lifestyle, and building that team. So when you need that help, it's there. When you have those documents and that financial plan in place, rather than being a catastrophe, it's something that you and your family can deal with. So imagine if you take those steps and what the impact it can have. Easy to find us. We're at Gilfix.com. You can easily set a planning meeting with us if you'd like to discuss this. Call us 650-493-8070. I think we have a different number on our website that also works. Gilfix.com, and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you found this helpful and want to share this with someone in your family who needs to hear this.